Good day, children. In the last audio file, we have finished paragraphs 1 to 10 of the lesson The Rat Trap. I hope all of you have completed the exercises and the questions associated with that audio file. Now, the story is all about a poor tramp wandering in the countryside selling rat traps. He believes that the world is a big rat trap setting baits for people. He leads a very lonely life, and one evening he is fortunate enough to get shelter and food at the crofter's house. But the very next day, he robs him of his only savings, that is 30 kronas, and is finally caught in the forest. The realization comes to him that he is also caught in the rat trap of the world, the bait being 30 kronas. He feels lost. And at this point of time, he hears a sound and gets to know that there must be some people around. Now let's continue with the lesson and find the other details. The Ramsjo Iron Works, which are now closed down, were not so long ago a large plant with smelter, rolling mill and forge. In the summertime, long lines of heavily loaded barges and scows slid down the canal which led to a large inland lake, and in the winter time the roads near the mill were black from all the coal dust which sifted down from the big charcoal crates. Here you get some idea about the Ramsjo Iron Works and the processes involved in that. The first one is smelting. Smelting is melting of iron to form to a shape. So the machine that is used for smelting is known as a smelter. Then the metal is rolled into sheets inside a rolling mill. Then barges and scows are a large or long flat bottomed boat for carrying goods. Then you also have big charcoal crates, that is big charcoal baskets. So the whole process of melting of iron and the other processes involved in to form the finished product is done in the ironwork. During one of the long dark evenings just before Christmas, the master smith and his helper sat in the dark forge near the furnace, waiting for the pig iron which had been put in the fire to be ready to put on the anvil. So you find the master smith and his helper waiting for the pig iron to be ready so that they can get into the next procedure. Every now and then one of them got up to stir the glowing mass with a long iron bar, returning in a few moments dripping with perspiration. Though, as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. All the time, there were many sounds to be heard in the forge. The big bellows groaned, and the burning coal cracked. The fire boy shoveled charcoal into the maw of the furnace with a great deal of clatter, with a great deal of sound or noise. Outside roared the waterfall, and a sharp north wind whipped the rain against the brick tiled roof. So here you get the details about all the sounds that is to be heard in the forge. So para 11 deals with Ramsjo Iron Works, para 12 deals with the activities going on, para 13 with the sounds to be heard in the forge. Now para 14. It was probably on account of all this noise that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge until he stood close up to the furnace. So taking advantage of all these incidents or instances happening in the ironworks, the rat trap seller got into the forge. Surely it was nothing unusual for poor vagabonds without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of light which escaped through the sooty panes, and to come in to warm themselves in front of the fire. The blacksmiths glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder. He looked the way people of his type usually did, with a long beard, dirty, ragged, and with a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. I would prefer you mark that particular point where the reaction of the blacksmith is highlighted. So you find rat trap seller gets into the forge, and blacksmith is accustomed to such happenings almost every day, so he doesn't give him much attention and he is allowed to stay there. He asked permission to stay, and the master blacksmith nodded a haughty consent, an arrogant consent, without honoring him with a single word. The tramp did not say anything either. He had not come there to talk, but only to warm himself and sleep. In those days, the Ramsjo iron mill was owned by a very prominent iron master, whose greatest ambition was to ship out good iron to the market. He watched both night and day to see that the work was done as well as possible, and at this very moment he came into the forge on one of his nightly rounds of inspection. So the next character comes into scene, that is the iron master. Why is he there? He has come to check how the work is progressing, because he was very particular about shipping only good quality irons into the market. Naturally, the first thing he saw was the tall ragamuffin who had eased his way so close to the furnace that steam rose from his wet rags. So just imagine how the rat trap seller was seated very close to the furnace, and you could literally see the steam coming out of his wet rags. The iron master did not follow the example of the blacksmiths, who had hardly bothered to look at the stranger. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully, then tore off his slouch hat to get a better view of his face. So I would prefer you mark that part also, the reaction of the iron master on seeing the rat trap seller. So you find blacksmith's reaction is entirely different from that of iron master's reaction. But of course it's you, Niels Olof, he said. How you do look. The man with the rat traps had never before seen the iron master at Ramsjo and did not even know what his name was. But it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman thought he was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of kroner. Therefore, he did not want to undeceive him all at once. So the rat trap seller did not know this iron master at all, but he plans to pretend that he is an acquaintance, hoping he would get some money from him. Yes, God knows things have gone downhill with me, he said. You should not have resigned from the regiment, said the iron master. That was the mistake. If only I had still been in the service at that time, it never would have happened. Well, now of course you will come home with me. So the iron master has mistaken him for an old acquaintance and he is inviting him home. Now the rat trap seller thought, what did he think? To go along up to the manor house, that is the iron master's house, farmhouse, and be received by the owner like an old regimental comrade, that however did not please the tramp. No, I couldn't think of it, he said, looking quite alarmed. He thought of the 30 kroner. To go up to the manor house would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. He only wanted a chance to sleep here in the forge and then sneak away as inconspicuously as possible. So the rat trap seller's only intention was to spend that night there and leave the place without being noticed. Now there is a sudden turn of the situation when the iron master mistakes him for an old acquaintance. The iron master assumed that he felt embarrassed because of his miserable clothing. Immediately he said, "Please don't think that I have such a fine home that you cannot show yourself there. Elizabeth is dead, as you may already have heard. My boys are abroad and there is no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. We were just saying that it was too bad we didn't have any company for Christmas. Now, come along with me and help us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster." So he is inviting the rat trap seller for Christmas. But the stranger said no and again no, and the iron master saw that he must give in. Here you find the iron master is trying his level best to take the rat trap seller home, but he is not ready to go to the iron master's house. So that was the last paragraph of this audio file, paragraph 29. After listening to the audio, complete your question answers. Thank you.